Every TV show needs a hero or two for the audience to invest in, and it's equally true that every great hero needs a villain to go up against. This rule has led to some truly great rivalries: Sherlock versus Moriarty, Itchy versus Scratchy, What Culture presenters versus Crushing Loneliness. The list goes on. The fact is, we need someone to love to hate, and for the hero to win against. But just like how sometimes the best heroes are former villains, so too can a heel turn by one of the protagonists make for something truly compelling. For a good person to flip the switch and irrevocably change who they are is not to be taken lightly, but when done right, it can make for the best kind of bad guy. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 TV shows where the hero became the villain. Number 10, Bill Compton, True Blood. Bill Compton was a big part of our gateway into the magical world of Bond temps. Vampire Bill is the first of the fangers we meet on the series, and he all round seems like a great bloke. He's every bit the southern gent, and while clearly not human and with some skeletons in his closet, he is a mainstreamer who lives peacefully and comfortably around humans. However, in the 5th season, Bill is converted by the fundamentalist Sanguinista movement and starts to believe himself the chosen form of Lilith, the progenitor of the vampire race. In part, this is his choice, but it is also due to the fact that he drinks Lilith's blood, becoming convinced of the movement's mission. Billith, as he becomes known, works to make vampires the dominant force in the world, killing humans and more mainstream vampires who stand in the way of the Vampire Bible's teachings, and serving as the main antagonist across seasons 5 and 6 of the show, before eventually returning back to the good side, filled with regret, and helping to save the day once again in the show's final season. Number 9, Sam and Dean Winchester, Supernatural. The thrust of the first 5 seasons of Supernatural was all about Sam's potential turn to the dark side, with his destiny being to bring about the end of the world after being infected by demon blood as a 6-month-old baby. In season 4 especially, Sam's transformation into the show's big bad was threaded throughout each episode, as he became addicted to drinking demon blood, which was turning him into a supernatural monster. Of course, he was talked down from the brink and kicked his habit, but the two brothers have towed the line between being heroes and villains ever since, albeit usually because another entity has taken over their body. Sam has been used as a vessel for the literal devil, a villainous archangel, and demons galore. Dean, on the other hand, turned bloodthirsty after receiving the Mark of Cain and became a demon for a few episodes and had a shapeshifter steal his skin way back in season 1. Number 8, Shane Walsh, The Walking Dead. When the series kicks off, Shane is Rick's best friend. He shows remorse over his friend being in hospital, and we learn has taken great care of his family while he's been in a coma. It's complicated, of course, by his growing feelings of love for Laurie Grimes, which he has to attempt to reconcile with Rick's return and his loyalty to his friend. He has a growing aggression inside him, but he's very much on the right side, serving as either a leader or Rick's right-hand man. But that anger inside of him only continues to expand and eventually starts forcing its way outwards across season 2. From there, he becomes increasingly unstable and then full-on a loose cannon. Towards the end of the 2nd season, he has completely devolved, going from someone who, while hardened, did care about his friends and was capable of compassion, into a remorseless killer and a lying, conniving human, luring his former best friend out into the woods in order to kill him and paying with his life. Number 7, Andy Bernard, The Office. Starting way back in season 3, Andy Bernard was a deliberately irritating character, but one with good intentions. Sure, he was an absolute kiss-ass, had some anger issues, and talked about Cornell way too much, but it was all in a goofy way that allowed him to always retain a degree of likability. When Michael Scott left Scranton, it was Andy who took on the role of the boss, and while it did highlight the disparity in the depth of quality between the two characters, it was far from a show-ruining change. Season 9, however, is when the character's real turn started. It was around this time that Ed Helms had to take a break from filming because of a new Hangover movie, missing a few episodes with Andy sent on a boat trip. But this also coincided with a complete turn in his character, where they made him the biggest jerk imaginable. He went from being a likable enough doof to an utterly horrible person. He was mean, vindictive, petty, but without any semblance of goodness or likability to go with it. Being a sitcom, The Office didn't have villains in the traditional sense, but their treatment of Andy's character is one of the reasons so many fans agree season 9 is the weakest point of the show. Number 6. Grant Ward, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Technically speaking, Grant Ward was never really a hero, but that just speaks to the strength of not only his character, but the entire Hydra plot in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D's first season. Ward was the textbook example of what a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent should be: smart, dedicated, and extremely skilled in combat. He played his role as the straight man to Clark Gregg's more quip-happy Agent Coulson, and if you were to create a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative in a lab, you'd probably get something like Ward. And then Hydra's infiltration was revealed, all hell broke loose, and it turned out that Ward had been working for Hydra all along. It's well known now, but this was a genuine holy shit moment back in Season 1. Ward was free of S.H.I.E.L.D. shackles and became one of the show's strongest antagonists, because he basically was S.H.I.E.L.D., only a bad guy, and it allowed for a great, intense personal rivalry with his former friends. Number 5. Dale Cooper, Twin Peaks / Twin Peaks The Return. Across the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks, Agent Dale Cooper was a paragon of goodness. He was kind, decent, and pure in a twisted world where evil and chaos reigned, and that made his ultimate fate all the more devastating. While the original run of Twin Peaks ended with a cliffhanger that only briefly showed us Coop being possessed by the villainous Killer Bob, the eventual follow-up, 2017's Twin Peaks The Return, went all the way with that idea. That's where we met the Black Lodge version of Cooper, known as Mr. C, who is a being of sheer malevolence. It's revealed that after assuming Cooper's identity, he went on to sexually assault Diane, and then, after an intervening period of 25 years where he was mostly off the grid, returns to the Twin Peaks area to carry out more of Bob's misdeeds, including murder, as an agent of total evil, and the complete inverse of the great Dale Cooper. Number 4. Lester, Fargo. The genius of Lester's villainous turn lies, at least in part, in the casting of Martin Freeman. While Freeman is a fine actor, he rarely strays too far from the same path: a quiet, unassuming, sweet-natured guy. Lester fits into this same pattern. An insurance salesman who we see was bullied as a child and continues to be as an adult, he comes across a fairly normal, if a little boring person. But over the course of Fargo's great first season, as his world dovetails with Billy Bob Thornton's Malvo, Lester takes a dark turn. It starts, somewhat surprisingly, right from the first episode. This downtrodden man has had enough, and pushed by his wife, snaps and brutally murders her with a hammer. It's a shock to the system, especially because it's Freeman, and Fargo plays on that dichotomy throughout its 10 episodes. Lester does some despicable things, and yet because so much of it is things spinning out of his control and plays with his own fear, it rarely commits to full-on villainy until the end. Number 3. Daenerys Targaryen, Game of Thrones. For the vast majority of Game of Thrones, Daenerys Targaryen is one of the 2 main heroes. With numerous parallels to Jon Snow, it's Dany who has her sights set on returning to Westeros, the homeland she had to flee as a baby, and claiming the Iron Throne she believes is rightfully hers. Along the way, she will free slaves, attempt to right wrongs, and ultimately break the wheel that has crushed the small folk for generation after generation. Unlike Jon, however, Daenerys' path was always slightly darker. It was scorched by fire and covered in blood. She had little trouble killing those who wronged her or those who she felt deserved it, and had Drogon burn people to ashes without so much as blinking. And yet, because they were slavers and killers themselves, she remained the hero throughout. That changed massively in the 8th and final season. Daenerys put aside her quest for the Iron Throne to fight in the Great War, but when all that was said and done, the people of Westeros still didn't love her. So she took the throne through force, turning Drogon's fiery fury on anyone and everyone. She continued this into the finale, promising to build a better world in her image and going full-on dictator in the process. With no way back, Jon was left with no choice but to put a dagger in her heart. Number 2. Walter White, Breaking Bad. It'd be impossible to talk about TV heroes who became villains without discussing the case of Walter White, who in the past decade or so has become the archetype for this trope. I mean, the show is called Breaking Bad, after all. When the series kicks off, Walt is a very likable, sympathetic figure. It's not just that he's cruelly diagnosed with cancer, but that his goal is to simply pay his medical bills. Sure, he's making drugs, but it's only because there's no other option available, right? Over the next few years, there are a number of potential breaking points for when Walt fully breaks bad. It might be when he kills Crazy 8, or how about when he lets Jane die, or that he continues long after he's made enough money. The point is that almost the entire way through, the show makes it possible to find excuses for Walt's actions for so long, until eventually it just straight up reveals the truth. He enjoys it. He loves being Heisenberg and is so far past the point of doing this for medical bills or his family. He's doing it for himself. Number 1. Willow Rosenberg, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer had a number of its heroic figures cross over to the dark side. Most famously, there was a split between Angel and Angelus, while Faith too broke bad, and even Buffy herself flirted with morally questionable actions. But none was such a major shift from where they started to the villain they became than Willow Rosenberg. Willow was every bit the sweet, geeky best friend type. She was kind, loyal, and helpful to anyone who'd ask. And so it was for a few years. The real shift came in Season 6. When Warren, attempting to kill Buffy, accidentally shoots and murders Tara, Willow goes full-on bad guy. The magic already building within Willow took a hold, alongside a desperate thirst for revenge, and Willow utilized dark magic to pay Warren back and then some, resulting in the awesome scene where she turns him inside out. Dark Willow eventually became too powerful, and what started as a grief-fueled revenge trip turned into an almost unstoppable witch intent on destroying the world, with the good Willow increasingly eroded away by her use of dark magic until there was only a faint trace of her left. Thankfully, that was enough for Xander to get through to her, but at the height of her powers, even Buffy was unable to stop her. And there you have it, folks, 10 TV shows where the hero became a villain. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to WhatCulture.com for daily news, lists, and articles. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.